The unemployment rate in Hawaii is the lowest it's been in years, while local businesses continue to grapple with the challenge of finding and retaining workers. From entry-level to highly skilled positions, the workforce shortage is impacting both the private and public sectors. Is the situation improving in our island home? Join the conversation on the workforce shortage problem, next on Insights on PBS Hawaii.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Lauren Day. According to a recent report, as of December 2023, the unemployment rate in Hawaii was 2.9%. Even with the low rate, though, businesses are still struggling to find and keep enough workers to operate successfully. The need for workers is great across every industry and at every level. Retail, hospitality, food service, healthcare workers, and civil services all need employees. So what can local businesses and organizations do to solve the workforce shortage? We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and as always, you will find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook and YouTube pages. All right, now to our guests in studio. We've got Tina Yamaki. She is the president of the Retail Merchants of Hawaii. She has been with the organization for 7 years. Prior to her current position, she held positions at the Honolulu Police Department, the Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association, and she was the director of business support here at PBS Hawaii. Menor-McNamara is the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii. She is the youngest and first female president in the organization's history. She previously worked for the Hawaii State Legislature Senator Daniel Akaka and the Sony Corporation. Carl Bonham is a professor of economics and the executive director of UHERO, the economic research organization at the University of Hawaii. He was a founding member of the organization in 1997. His research focuses on macroeconomics and the Hawaii economy. Gemma Weinstein is the president of Unite Here Local 5, which represents 10,000 hotel, healthcare, and food service workers throughout Hawaii. Gemma has been a member of Local 5 for over 30 years and originally joined the union working as a housekeeper in Waikiki. Thank you all for joining us and being with us in studio tonight. Carl, I want to start with you. Can you give us sort of a brief economics lesson? How has Hawaii's unemployment rate changed specifically over the last couple of years?
I'll try to be brief. I'm not known for that, but I mean, if you go back to the height of the pandemic, the unemployment rate was over 20%. And basically when we were completely shut down, I think the unemployment rate peaked at 22%. And then as we reopened to tourism and reopened the economy, demand for workers came back very, very strongly, but the labor force didn't come back. Right, workers didn't come back as quickly as the need for workers grew because of businesses reopening, and so unemployment rate actually came down quite quickly, and it created this huge gap between the demand for workers and the supply of workers, and that persisted all the way through last year. It's mostly sort of back to normal, our sort of typical excess demand for workers. Businesses need more workers than we have in the labor force on average in any given year. And we're actually back to about where we were in 2018, 2019, with about 1.5 jobs for every unemployed worker in the state. That's actually pretty typical. But what's different is that those sectors of the economy that got hit the worst, they got hit the hardest during the pandemic, are still struggling to sort of get back to some degree of normalcy, and they're having to adjust how they conduct their businesses. And the prime example really is food service. That's really where you've seen the biggest impacts. But as you said, it's government, healthcare, across the board. But you don't hear law firms. You don't hear there are sectors of the economy where you don't hear people talking about an abnormal shortage like you do in, for example, food service.
Yeah. Tina, what are you hearing from folks in the retail industry? Is the problem that no one is applying for these positions or not enough people, or these businesses are struggling to find workers that meet their standards?
It's a little bit of both. We found out during the pandemic, a lot of people who, said, I'm going to retire next year, I'm going to retire next year. They finally did retire when the pandemic hit because they found out it's not so bad staying home, so we lost them. There's a new breed of people out there who don't want to work in the service industry. They want to work from home. And if you're in a restaurant or especially a retailer and you want to buy that pajamas or whatever, and I'm at home eating Cheetos and watching Netflix, I can't check you out, you know, so we need people on site. So we are seeing a different type of worker that is coming out, and it's getting harder and harder to find people.
Sherry, what about you? What have you heard from local businesses? How big of a problem is the worker shortage problem for these businesses?
It is, and Carl touched upon it, you know, and Tina as well. The hospitality, retail, restaurant industry have been impacted. With that said, you said it earlier, it's across the board, and I think it's for various reasons. One is childcare. During COVID, they're able to take care of the kids, so their schedule changed and the way they conducted business changed. And so once many returned to work, some did not want to because of childcare, understandably. That's one reason. Another reason is many of the workers decided they wanted to pivot industries and not work in hospitality and want to explore other industries, let's say healthcare. The other is just not ready to go back to work. So we've been hearing all kinds of reasons as to why it's hard to fill those positions. And for employers too, it's having that skilled workforce. And so that's something I know that the chamber we're working on, is to prepare those who wanted to pivot to these other jobs, is to retrain and upskill many of these workers.
And what are you seeing as the biggest challenge this worker shortage has created for these businesses?
Oh, well, we've seen it already, the ramifications. We've seen many small businesses close their doors, lessen their hours, cut positions. So the struggle is real. They're having a hard time filling these positions. And so if we don't find different creative solutions to fill these positions, we're going to continue to see that trend.
Gemma, I'm curious to hear from the union perspective, all the positions that Local 5 represents, are those filled, or are there vacancies as well where people aren't getting the jobs, or they're applying and looking for work?
Well, as a worker and a president of Local 5, we do talk to the members every day, and I think the struggle of workers that actually retired during pandemic, we have about 11,000 members, and we're still short up to now. I think the problem is not really about short of workers. It's actually the problem that this is based on our experience as a Local 5 members, and we see that yes, they're back to work, but they're not getting hours. It's because of cutting the service, cutting the quality service, like in food service, like in healthcare. We fight on healthcare to have more staffings, so that they can take care of the patient. We fight to have more, workers to be on the floor so that they can give the quality service to the customer, to the tourist, so that we can give them the aloha and we can make them feel the paradise of Hawaii. But we can't do that. We still have a lot of members of Local 5 that actually not back to work. So I hear about shortage, not just here. I hear it on the news, shortage, but on our membership, we have members not back to work.
Not back to work because they're not getting enough hours, or they aren't getting the jobs?
Well, it's both, because the cut of quality service. Also, some of our properties still don't have daily room cleaning, and some of the restaurant did not open, or they stop serving guests like room service. So a lot of our properties or hotel that we represent actually don't have any more room service. So they're cut that. So those workers that work on that classification have no way to go and get a job because they cut their position.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're bringing up a point about how COVID really changed the workforce and the job view.
COVID changed everything. And the laundry list of things that have impacted the labor market during COVID is so long. From Sherry mentioned childcare, right? Well, we had to have childcare because the kids weren't in school, right? And that went on and then people may have been at home. So think about, as we started recovering from COVID and as the demand for workers started going up and the labor supply didn't come back, right? The workers didn't offer to come to work as quickly. And some of that was childcare. They were maybe caring for a sick family member, somebody in their family, or the worker had long COVID, or they started their own business. So we had an enormous increase in business startups during COVID. So someone who was working in a restaurant decided, okay, I'm not going to go back and work in that restaurant anymore. Instead, I'm going to make chocolates at home and sell them online, or whatever the business model was. And so, as I said, pivoting to a new career, and then that leaves the hardest hit industries still struggling. And then you put that together with, remember, COVID was 4 years ago, right? I mean, the pandemic, and over that time, since right before the pandemic till now, the 65 and older population in the state grew by maybe 17,000, 18,000 people. So we were talking about retiring, right? So a lot of those people just simply aren't looking to work anymore. And that's and that's something we have to sort of plan for and look forward to for the next 5 years, right? We're not getting any younger.
And maybe you can speak to the birth rate as well, because is that, the population that's retiring, is that getting replaced
No.
Size-wise?
No, I mean, the total population in the state is down over 20,000 people since 2017, 2018. And the working age population is also smaller. And then on top of that, because of the aging of the population, the participation in the labor force is smaller. So instead of almost 62% of the working age population being in the labor force, now it's a little over 60%. And that difference is about 15,000 workers that would be here if you could induce these older workers. So businesses have to make adjustments to how they do their business. So, figure out ways to make their workers more productive, but also figure out ways to get older people to come back to work. And it's about perks, and as Tina was talking about, they also they want to work remote, or they want to do hybrid. So there's a lot of things businesses are struggling with to deal with this.
Gemma, you mentioned a lot of your workers retired during the pandemic. Were they, were more younger workers? Did they come in as well to replace them?
Well, that's the problem that we still facing, because we have a lot of. If they said that we don't have anybody applying for the job, we have our members refer, they refer their family. And we know that because we have job fair. And those family members that they refer to actually work, but they don't even get an interview. It's not about I'm against it. What I'm saying is what we are experiencing as a union member. I don't know what's going on in our union, but we struggle to fight for workers, hours. And prior to pandemic, like PBS itself, like telephone operator, we used to have 2 people working every shift. Because of the 2 incidents that happened into 2 of our properties, they have to put back a telephone operator. We used to have 3, now only 1 person. The incident that happened back then is really scary, because active shooter into that property, our housekeeper don't know who to call, hiding in one room because she have no one to talk to. I'm here, please take me out of this room because of this incident. And active shooter is happening in one room. And the other one is one of the guests called family member in mainland and said something about concerning, and the guest in mainland actually called hotel, but nobody is responding or answering the phone. They have to call police and ambulance go to the hotel because there's no telephone operator. And those are the things that actually it's happening. And that's why our members continue to fight until now to get our job that we have in 2019 prior to pandemic. So that's the biggest problem that we're actually pacing right now. We still continue fighting to get the job that I have when 2019, I'm a full-time workers. We have a lot of that. They are full-time prior to pandemic. After pandemic, it's been 4 years, occupancy come back, and they're not bringing them back. They have, when they said, oh, I don't have hours for you, it's because they cut the service. It's because the staffing is now short, and workers that have hours is working harder than they used to in 2019. Yes, they have to work hard because they're getting paid, but they're doing a job of 3 people instead of what they're doing in 2019. So that's where the problem is. Again, I'm going to repeat myself. This is what I'm hearing to our members, Local 5, but if these workers that have a union really struggling to fight to bring back the service or quality service for the guests, what more those workers that don't have a union? I don't know what's going on in there, but that's based on our experience right now. We continue to fight to have our job on 2019.
Sherry, does that surprise you hearing that there are, workers with the union that are ready to work, but that, the jobs just haven't come back to what they were pre-COVID? And what do you think we can do as a state to get those workers working again?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the number one priority is to get people back to work and ensure that they can restore their livelihoods, right? So I understand what Gemma was saying. I think every business is different as to the reason why they cannot restore the positions. I mean, overall, obviously the cost of living, cost of doing business continues to get more challenging. So that's one factor as it relates to tourism. Tourism hasn't quite come back to where it was pre-pandemic. So how are businesses adjusting to that? And there's so many other factors, but what can we do? How can businesses adjust accordingly so we can have these positions restored? Again, I believe businesses, each one has different reasons as to why they can't restore the positions. And as a result of COVID, was forced to adjust accordingly.
Tina, I'm sure you're seeing that across the board. We talked about hours being impacted for retail stores.
Yeah, so for those people who found out that their little side business, or they found out that they can actually survive on it as a cottage industry during pandemic, so they didn't come back to work. But those new businesses that started during the pandemic, in their business plan, they took into effect the hours, the number of people, and a whole bunch of other things, whereas existing businesses had to scramble and figure that out on how to keep their businesses running, how to kind of pivot and change and make sure everything is working. And so that was kind of a harder thing. And like you said, with the hours being cut, what we're finding out at the shopping mall, because of, like Carl said, people have changed since the pandemic. So if you're at a shopping mall, usually by 7 o'clock, it's pretty dead. Everybody's not there. Maybe there's a few people picking up food or things like that. So that's kind of changed too on how people are working. We're also finding out that a lot of the workers, they don't want to work certain hours. They want to work a short period of time for a lot of money. And so it's kind of that balance of how can businesses afford everything, and do what their employees want, but still make a profit in order to pay them and pay their rent. And we also got to remember too, a lot of businesses, especially the small ones, they're still trying to pay back loans and debts that they had during the pandemic in order to keep their businesses open, to keep their employees working for as long as they could. And a lot of these people too, in order to do that, they found out that if they did partnerships, that really helped too. So instead of closing the business down because we couldn't do one thing, hey, let's look at something else. So we saw clothing people partnering up with food people, like, buy a t-shirt, get a box of cookies kind of thing for Mother's Day or Father's Day or stuff like that. And it's partnerships that you've never seen before happen.
The consumers have adjusted their behavior too. During COVID, everything turned to online
shopping.
And once you get used to that, right, it's how do you encourage them to go back to the shopping centers?
So what we found out, the online, a lot of the kapuna have found out it's really easy. You can order that 10, 15-pound bag of rice and it gets delivered to you and you don't have to struggle to get it to your car and in your house. But now we're seeing more people coming back into the stores and even the younger generation, because we've all seen it on social media. You order something and when it comes, it's totally different. Like the chair you ordered is maybe 2 inches tall, or the dress you ordered is nothing like you ever had. It looks like maybe a preschooler made it. So people are still going back into the shopping malls, and we're seeing that, especially over this past holiday season. There are a lot more shoppers during the Black Friday sales and even after the Christmas sales.
Gemma, hearing about, when we talk about the changes of the consumer industry through COVID, does that worry you when you talk about like how the hotels are maybe not offering daily cleanings, or there's not, room service anymore for your employees to get those jobs?
Well, it really worries me, and it's not just because of the job. It worries me more also about like community of Hawaii. If we continue to abandon a quality service for customer, I'm worried about like we're not gonna have any tourists at all to come. And the reason why is like mostly tourists come to Hawaii because Hawaii known for aloha. Hawaii known, it's a paradise of Hawaii. We wanna go to Hawaii because it's paradise. And it worries me and all the stuff that is happening, like based on our experience, it feels like the quality of the service that need to give to the guests, to the customer, to the tourists, it's gone. Like it's not as the same as this. Every time we talk to the workers, I'm tired. I'm tired working by myself. They don't care about the guest is saying. The workers feel like, it's more important for them to make money than to actually make sure that making money is a long term, not just for that day. And that's what the workers are talking about. One day we're not gonna have any guests coming to Hawaii anymore. They will come to Hawaii, go back home, and talk about how bad it is in Hawaii if you go into the hotel. That worries me. And also, like, I kind of like thinking this, I've been 33 years in this union and industry. We saw also, like, in food service itself, like, I think you guys know about, like, technology. Now you can order food in technology, and that worries me too, because once people, like calling or shopping, we're not gonna have a job on our service. We're not gonna have like waitress. Where is their job once the technology will come? We saw this when we go to mainland, like you will order, you will pay there. We're not gonna have any cashier anymore.
Yeah.
And those are jobs that when the customer will pay, and the workers love to talk to the guests, love to talk to their tourists, and hey, you guys go to this, it's beautiful. Who will tell those guests if we don't have workers? And the workers say, I would like to spend more time to give a good service to my customer, to the tourists, so that they will come back.
Yeah.
But it's not happening nowadays. And workers, every time when you walk to the guests, we talk to the workers, we just have like not just housekeeping, we have a meeting for maintenance, which is engineering, we have meeting for clerical, we have meeting for like the bellman, every department. The thing that they talk about is short staffing.
I do
So
want to.
that's the problem.
Yeah. I want to bring up some viewer comments and questions, because there's a theme here, and this is something that I think I want everyone to weigh in on. I'll start with a theme first for our viewers watching. It's affordable housing. So I'm going to read a couple comments and then I'll ask the questions. But we have a caller from Maui who said Hawaii should address affordable housing to attract more employees. Martha from Pepe Ekeo has a comment. She says, I think this worker shortage is related to the affordable housing shortage because they're not getting paid enough to pay for housing. That's probably why we're losing so many workers in lower paying jobs. Carl, I'll direct the first question to you. This is a caller from Eva Beach. Is this a worker shortage or an affordable housing shortage? And kind of another caller has a similar question. I'm just going to read it since we're on the same topic. George from Maui is asking, the reason we have a worker shortage is affordable housing. During COVID, a lot of people moved away, especially to Vegas. Why should workers stay here?
So this isn't something that just started with COVID. So affordable housing absolutely plays a role here, primarily through in and out migration. And basically, what's happened over the last decade is out migration to the continent has grown, roughly doubled in size, and international in-migration has disappeared. And some of that probably came with policy changes in DC, and then it was impacted by COVID. And so as a net result, we're losing population. So that's contributing to the worker shortage. And it's definitely related to housing, right? So when people decide where they're going to live, they're looking at everything from how much they can earn in the job they're employed in, what the quality of the schools are, what the neighborhood is like, what's the culture, how good is the surf, can they afford to live there? And so people who are moving away or not coming here are making those choices. So improving the housing situation will make a difference, but it will not completely solve the problem, because a big piece of this problem is the fact that we are aging. And so you're going to have a significant in-migration of younger workers to be able to offset the aging of the population, probably more than we can expect, even if we put a cap on, even if home prices didn't go up at all for the next 5 years.
But then that also brings to another topic too of, do we have enough housing supply on the island, right? If we even did have a big immigration.
Well, so if your population is declining, that's the wrong way to sort of address the housing problem, but it does ease that housing problem a little bit. The bottom line is that we need to address affordable housing, period, regardless if it's the root cause of the worker shortage or not. It absolutely plays a role. It's not the only cause.
Sherry, since COVID, what are you hearing from local businesses as far as what they are trying to offer employees as incentives to take the job?
Yeah, well, number one, the cost of doing business continues to go up. It's challenging. In fact, we just launched our blueprint for Hawaii's economy 2030. It's a long-term, stakeholder-driven plan. And one of the pillars that we need to focus on is the workforce. And so there are a few initiatives out there right now that attempt to address this workforce challenge. One is a Good Jobs Hawaii, which is a partnership with the University of Hawaii system and the community colleges. It's a federal grant that provides monies to those who want to get trained for these available jobs, let's say in healthcare or IT or creative industries. And so this fund, or this grant, Good Jobs Grant, allows interns to be able to get paid above average, good paying salaries, as well as employers getting paid. So that's one of the initiatives. The other is sector partnerships, which is, again, a public-private partnership to address and discuss what are the needs for the future workforce. And I bring these up because while we need to address the short term, we also need to look at it from a long-term perspective too. How do we build a pipeline of workers that are going to be prepared for the future jobs? And so from this approach, we really need to invest in our education workforce development initiatives. But definitely housing is a huge issue from a short-term perspective that is keeping employees from staying here.
Can I follow up on that? So one of the things that, housing in Hawaii is the most expensive of pretty much anywhere in the country, but that hasn't really changed that much. I mean, actually our home prices and our rents didn't go up nearly as much as they did nationally over the last 5 years. I know that's not much consolation. When you hit $1 million, that's a psychological barrier and a financial barrier. But I think the thing that has changed a lot over the last decade is that we haven't created the same kinds of jobs that have been available on the continent. And so this these kinds of workforce training efforts to make it so that people can get into better paying jobs so they can stay here is really important. So that they don't have to leave in order to find that job on the continent.
Yeah, I think that this topic is a good segue to Miles's question. He's from Hawaii Kai, and he's asking, and maybe this is something if any of you have intel on, you can weigh in on, has the state ever considered establishing a high school internship program for students to obtain on-the-job experience?
Thank you for asking that question. As a matter of fact, for one of the priorities for our legislative agenda is for the legislature to create a grant for internships. So for small businesses, and Tina will know, it costs to onboard employees, bring on an employee, an intern, train them. And so, but we want to encourage small businesses to bring on interns, college or high school for that matter. And so this grant program will help offset some of the costs as well as pay for the internships. Because how about if we have a high school intern work for this business here, let's say Oceanit, and he starts a high school intern. Oceanit decides, wow, this is going to be a good employee. So why not keep this intern in the pipeline while that person goes to college, either away or here, and eventually comes back here to return to Oceanit. So again, we're looking at it from a long-term perspective and creating this pipeline. And so, yes, we do advocate for more support for high school internships so that we can start the interest in these different types of jobs from early on and invest in them.
I want to add on to that. So in my past life, when I worked with the hotels, there was a program where you kind of had a hotel partner up with a high school, and they went in and they talked to the kids and let them know, hey, these are all the different kind of things that we have to offer. And then they had where the kids could come in and they got to see all the different departments and maybe even work there for 1 week shadowing to see what it was really like and if it's something that they wanted to do. But we also found out that it should be the teachers who go through these internship programs too, to know what it's like to be in business, because a lot of them have never really worked. Maybe their first job was in retail or fast food, and that has really changed over the years. For retailers, we don't really have an internship program because we will hire you from 16 years of age and you are getting paid right then and there, and you have a job, and we do the on-the-job training and stuff. So our industry is just a little bit different with regards to internships. Although the corporate side of it, they do take in interns, whether it's for graphic arts or sometimes it's for sales and marketing type of things. So they do it that way, but we've been doing it quietly throughout the years.
Yeah, that's called work-based learning opportunities. So it's starting from early on, from even elementary school, and then middle school and high school. But yeah, that's going to be critical to build that workforce. And the sector partnerships, the one I brought on earlier, is about bringing the education committees, such as teachers of what Tina mentioned, the employers, as well as the community colleges coming together and having the employer drive what kind of skill sets are necessary for students to learn and for teachers to teach the students for real life opportunities, right? Yeah. Real life skill sets, rather.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I want to be a chef, why do I need to know math, right? Kind of thing to do the recipes. But, you know, we are finding out that it's just us as the industry, we need to get out and go into the schools from an early age to let them know that, hey, we have other things just than cashiers and people stocking and folding the clothes and things like that. We have all these opportunities that are out there that you may not think of. And so we are looking to get into the elementary schools, the intermediate schools, and the high school. By the time they're in the high school, they kind of know what they want to do already, and you've kind of lost them. You got to start them out at a younger age to get them excited and to start thinking about things.
Yeah. In Local 5, we actually have like a program that we call like, you know, if they want to upgrade their skills, like to become engineering, to become a chef, we actually have a program for our membership, you know, so that they can find, you know, if they have no hours on this particular job that they are now, you know, they can go to this program and actually upgrade their skills so they can get job in other classifications. So we have that in our, you know, for our membership.
Yeah, that's really cool.
You know, I think you'd be surprised how many internship programs already exist, but it's just not one big coordinated system, right? I mean, it's not uncommon for all the colleges at the university and the community colleges to have some form of internship programs, and I think some coordination makes good sense.
But the thing too is that a lot of these internship programs, they're for the ones who want to go on to college. They want to go on to higher education. But what about those kids who want to go directly into a job or learn a trade skill? There's not a lot of stuff for them, and that's kind of the area that we're focusing at, because there's, like I said, there's not a lot out there for these guys.
And there are some really good high-paying trade jobs that need workers.
One of the successful example is Hawaiʻi Pacific Health. They have this from high school to career, and what they did is create a program in high school, for example, at Waipahu High School, right? Their academy.
The health academy.
Yeah, so they can, high school students can get their med tech certificate and work at HPH during high school or intern. And as soon as they graduate, because some don't want to go to college, and they go directly to working for Hawaiʻi Pacific Health and starting at a higher level paying job. And then if they decide to return back to school, then fine, but at least they can continue on that path and increasing their wage level too at the same time. So it's exciting. There are some programs, and I think other businesses are adopting that program as well.
I feel like we need more of that, because we all know, we hear about the health care worker shortage, right, Gemma? I'm sure you hear about that all the time too.
Yes, and you know, like talking about the program that we have, some of the nursing aid actually goes to school so that if they want to become a nurse, registered nurse. So we have that class too, and it's just the partnership is just happened like I think 2 years ago. So that's something that we really look at. You know, when workers want to upgrade, or you know, if there's a problem or issue on hiring more workers on this job, you know, we have the Harriet program that we have that we can actually get in there. So it's the workforce among our membership is there. You know, so we're doing everything we can to make sure that our workforce have a job. It's just the problem is the job that they used to have is gone. And the management or corporation is actually taking that away from the workers. So that's where the problem is. You know, so.
That kind of leads into this viewer's question. This is Michael in Makiki. And I think anyone can weigh in on this, but does the current worker shortage scenario force businesses to change their business model? You can only raise prices so much, and employers can only raise wages so much without losing money. It seems like it's time for out-of-the-box thinking. Sherry, maybe I'll start with you. What are you hearing from businesses as far as maybe what they're doing to try and think out of the box and, you know, work around this problem?
Yeah, I think every business is different in what they offer. You know, one, we always hear flexibility, providing with some to work from home or this hybrid situation. Childcare, providing them childcare. Because we're hearing it's not necessarily just the wage, it's other factors, non-monetary factors that employees are interested in staying at the company, you know, the retention, worker retention. And so I think it depends on each business and figuring out what the employees want and developing incentive packages around that. I think a lot of times we have standard packages or offers or benefits, but let's talk with them, let's listen to the employees and see what do they want and customize it so that the employees are responding to their needs and their wants, so that yes, they want to stay with the business. So creative ideas, you know, let's have that kind of discussion. But I think what we're hearing is that more businesses are responding to employees of what they need and being flexible about it.
Tina, is that hard though for the smaller businesses to be able to, you know, offer non-monetary other benefits for employees?
You know, some of them have gotten really creative in what they do, where there's one every quarter they do like a picnic or something, or they go clean the beach. It's what the workers want to do. They may close the store for that day and just go out and do that on a slow day. And have a barbecue or something like that, because that's what the workers want. They want to do something to help the environment. You know, other workers, they want to have a party and get together and network with some of the other people. you know, a lot of it is monetary. We heard of one that took her entire staff to the BTS concert, all things paid for in Vegas, you know. And then we hear other ones where they have appreciation parties. I think a lot of the employees, they want to be heard. It's not necessarily telling your employer, we want this, or can you think about this? As employers, we actually have to listen to them and try and make it work a lot of times. You can't just go, yeah. You know, we got to really help our workers as well, too. I mean, not everybody can afford to pay them to go to college like some of the larger ones do, but there's other ways that the employers are paid back or employees are paid back.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Gemma, you want to go first?
Yes. So on the that question from Makikita, like, you know, I think we do understand, you know, that the business need to adjust, you know, but we also know if the business will close down, our member is not going to have a job. That's why we do our research. We're not going to ask something that we know that the management or corporation cannot afford to give. We're not going to ask something huge if we know the corporation is actually going bankruptcy. We know that because we do care our members and we do care that they should have a job. So it's not like we're crazy. Union is crazy, like asking so much money they can afford, because we know that if we ask so much and they will go bankruptcy, we're not gonna have a job. Right. You know, the workers are not gonna have a job. So we're not like that. So we have a research team and we do research if what we're asking is actually affordable for the employer to give it to the workers. And it's important, like you said, they need to talk to the workers and listen to the workers, because workers know best.
Have that open line of
Yes.
communication. Carl, you wanted to add to
The
it?
short answer to this question is yes, businesses have to change, and they're already changing, right? They're already, and the businesses, the best run businesses, the best managed, and the ones that will thrive are the ones that figure this out, right? Figure out how to combine technology to increase productivity, how to be flexible, how to allow for some hybrid work, how to give people time off to do childcare or to do care for elderly parents or whatever it is. But basically, you know, recognizing how important the employees are, right? That's the core of really every business. And you know, we're seeing this across the board. Businesses are adjusting, and this is going to be an ongoing issue because of aging, right? And it's true. Hawaii, I think the median age in Hawaii is about 41. It went up a year over the last 5 years, and like I said, about 18,000 people aged into retirement over the last 5 years, and that's going to continue for the next decade or so. So businesses are going to have to continue to make these adjustments.
If I could add, you know, with COVID and Maui wildfires and so many other situations, individual situations too, the health of the employees is important. And I think we need to do more with mental health too. So that's another area that we're hearing more discussion is mental health. How do we make sure that we foster a healthy environment at work, as well as ensure that employees are supported? So that's something that we've been hearing a lot from businesses as to how we can ensure that we continue to invest in our employees and build a healthier workforce.
I have a sort of controversial question that some people may think is controversial from Jim in Kalihi. He's saying, as a small business owner, I think a large portion of this generation has chosen not to work, instead trying to be social media stars. Now, this is, you know, referring to the younger generation. Tina and Sherry, is this something
I
that...
defer to Tina, but she was talking about that earlier before we started.
You know, it's funny. During the pandemic, after the pandemic, we saw a lot of quote unquote influencers, you know, and they see things on social media and think that's gonna be me, I'm gonna make millions of dollars. They come into our stores and they ask everything for free, and I'm gonna put you on my social media page and you're gonna make hundreds of dollars or millions of dollars and you're gonna get hundreds of followers. But that's not necessarily the case. There's very few who become to that level. It's like kind of like getting into the NBA. And unfortunately, there is a generation that thinks that that's a lifestyle, but how they're supporting it is they're in debt. They can't afford all of these luxury goods, so they're putting it all on credit cards or their parents' credit cards. And we've heard of some parents even going into a second mortgage in order to pay for these quote unquote influencers.
That's
Going back to what Carl said about technology, employers, because we're so, as employers, sometimes used to, or businesses, doing things a certain way. But we know that next generations are coming in, right? And technology, social media. So how can we ask the younger generation to help us, the business, integrate social media and use their savvy skill sets in technology and social media to build the business? So it's having that open, two-way conversation.
Are businesses actually seeing less job applicants in the younger age range, or just less applicants just in general?
It depends what the position is, because like for social media, for certain companies, they get a lot of applications for that. And they have actually used it. So pandemic, you actually, when the stores were closed, you had to have a social media presence. You had to have an online presence where you could buy stuff. And they found out the power of social media. So they were actually using it a lot to their advantage. So they have, and it doesn't matter if you're a new company or an old company. Those companies who said, this is how we do it, this is how we always done it, we don't need social media or online sales, their businesses are closed. But the ones who embraced it and took it a step farther, they're the ones that are still in business today.
Kind of a good segue. This viewer, Kalina from IAEA, is asking, why can't Hawaii lower the working age to 14? Do you think that would solve any problems here? Carl, you.
Well, I mean, there's a good reason not to lower it to 14, because we want our 14-year-olds in school and not working. And I think it would make more sense for us to make adjustments to our workplaces so that we keep older workers in the workplace rather than go in the other direction, and change things like make sure we have enough affordable housing and we've got good schools and we can attract people to stay in Hawaii so our population doesn't shrink over time.
The other thing too is when you hire someone who's below the age of 16, you get into a whole gamut of other rules. They can't use certain equipment, you can't do this, you can't do that. So that's why a lot of businesses have it at 16 years of age.
Should I just add to that, because like when workers are working at age of 14, but what is the 14 years old job is gonna have? Like, is it a good paying job? And I think that's what we gotta take a look at too. We have young people that wanna be an influencer, wanna be on the TikTok and make money. It's because, living in Hawaii is so expensive. Affordable housing is not there. So the mindset is I need to make a lot of money so that I can stay in Hawaii. And how can they make if, what kind of job the 14 years old can actually get, So those the thing I think having like if we have more affordable housing, lesser workers are actually gonna think about like, I need to have a 2 job, I need to have a job that paying this much, instead of like, right now workers will look on a job that they can get more money. And yes, we talk about the TikTok, it's because they see that these influencers are actually making a lot of money. Why do they need to make a lot of money? They need that money to survive in Hawaii. Hopefully, we can have that problem be resolved, have more affordable housing, and I think Local 5 is known going to the street, going to the state capitol to fight to have more affordable housing. We're doing that long time that we've been fighting to have more affordable housing.
Gemma, I was curious if you'd be willing to share maybe from your personal experience. You started as a housekeeper.
Yes.
Was that 30 years ago?
Yes, I'm 25 years old, and it's my first job. I'm originally from the Philippines. I migrated here, and I told to myself, whatever, I applied for so many jobs, and I said, whoever called me first, that's my job. And I got called in Ala Moana, and I worked there as a housekeeper, and then, I worked myself way up.
You said you were 25 when you
I'm 25 when it's yeah.
Did you ever think back then that you would, you know, in the future be the president of the union?
Not even once. Never. Never. You know?
I asked you this because I'm curious what you would say to maybe anyone watching who is, you know, young or starting out their career and, you know, frustrated about the cost of living here in Hawaii. What would you want to say to them to encourage them about their career?
So I think, you know, like back when I'm 25 years old, I don't even care about like the pension. But I think, you know, now that I'm old, the benefits of having a pension, it's important. All I can say to the young people, like when they look for a job, you know, like even though it's a first job, good paying job, that's where I start. That's the reason why I took that job. It's because a good paying job, because I have a good benefits. I have pre-medical, you know, me and my husband, and I raised 2 kids, and they have the pre-medical till the age of 26. You know, I covered my husband and continue to dream. That's what I can say.
Yeah.
You know, continue to dream. Don't stop dreaming.
I love that.
So,
Positive.
you know, the interesting thing is, I don't know if you know the statistics on this, but I would guess that the average age of a housekeeper in, say, in Waikiki, it's probably getting close to 60, maybe 55. It's older than, quite a bit older than the average age of the population in Hawaii. So those retirements that will come, we're going to have a hard time finding people to take those jobs. And that's just one microcosm of our state, where the aging of that population is going to continue to play a role, and businesses are going to continue to have to adjust.
Yeah, I was actually glad that you mentioned that, because on our statistics, it's showing that we have more workers that retiring in our membership than coming in.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things also that we're worried.
I only have just 3 minutes left. Sherry, I'll let you have a word.
No, just on top, in addition, you know, on a federal level, looking at policies with immigration laws to make it less challenging to come to the States, especially Hawaii. I mean, it's so many obstacles, right? But if we want to continue this pipeline of workers to fill the positions, a younger generation come to Hawaii, we need to focus or address the immigration laws on a federal level.
Just to sort of, you know, sum everything up with our last few minutes, Carl, from an economic standpoint, are you really concerned about what the workforce is going to look like 10, 20, 30 years from now?
I wouldn't say really concerned. It wouldn't be in other words, I think our economy will adjust, right? Businesses will adjust. But that's also assuming that we get some of the policies right and we address the affordable housing crisis. We take care of Hawaii, right? If we do things right for the people of Hawaii, you know, population won't continue to decline forever. The birth rate's not going to keep going down forever, and businesses will adjust, and technology will also adjust, right? I'm surprised that artificial intelligence didn't come up in this conversation, but
It just did.
you know, there are changes in technology that will make it so that we can continue to thrive even without having a growing population and a growing labor force. And I think that's where we're headed.
Just last few minutes, I want to give the last 2 words to Tina and Sherry here. Anything you'd like to say to businesses about either what they can do to attract workers, or, you know, just to keep pushing through and be innovative?
I think they got to keep pushing through, being innovative. Retail has always learned that we can't stay static. It's always evolving. I mean, if you go to some of these beauty stores now, you can, you know, pick up a lipstick and you can get your hair done, you know. They're finding different ways to do that. And I think we're always going to be around, but what the look of retail is going to be 5, 10, 20 years from now is probably going to be different than what we're seeing it today.
Sherry, what would you tell, you know, the restaurant owner, the business owner who's just been having a hard time getting applicants and they've had that help wanted sign up for a while now?
Well, from a policy standpoint, advocate. Be part of the legislative process, because the more voices out there, the more impact the voice will be in creating policy changes, because unless we address the cost of doing business, it's going to get more challenging, as well as cost of living. That's one. Two, listening to your employees, figuring out what are they most interested in that will keep them there at the job. As we talked about it earlier, providing that flexibility and so forth. And then three, have shared practices. Talk with other businesses to find out what they're doing that's making it successful for them to keep their workers as well as attract workers.
I'm really hearing a theme about having more of an open communication, both between businesses and also the employer to the employee. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight on this panel. We probably could have talked longer and talked about artificial intelligence, but that will be a topic for another time. We want to thank you all as well for joining us and watching tonight's show. In studio, Tina Yamaki, the president of Retail Merchants of Hawaii, Carl Bonham, the director of UHero, Sherry Menor-McNamara, the president of the Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii, and Gemma Weinstein, the president of Unite Here Local 5. Next week on Insights, we discuss the seemingly never-ending battle against illegal fireworks. So is the task force doing enough? Please join us then. I'm Lauren Day for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Have a great night.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaii are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Ulupono Initiative, building a more sustainable Hawaii by investing in local food, renewable energy, clean transportation, and waste and freshwater management. Hawaiian Electric, helping residents and businesses prepare for hurricane